Virtual Blockchain Week is coming. April 26th through May 2nd will be the world's most ambitious virtual live crypto event ever. And best of all, it's free. Go to virtualblockchainweek.com now and save your place. Sheila Warren began her career as a Wall Street attorney before turning to philanthropy and nonprofit tech over a decade ago. She's represented banks, philanthropists, and progressive nonprofits. Now, Sheila's the head of blockchain at the World Economic Forum. Yes, that World Economic Forum. And we're excited to welcome Sheila to the show today. Not only is she bullish on blockchain and super smart, but she's also a lot of fun and has earned her place in the Bad Crypto Hall of Fame. If you're a fan of acronyms, you're going to love our WEF episode number 398 of the BCP.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Who's bad?
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm Joel. What's your name?
Tony.
Hey, Tony.
Tony Bag of Donuts.
Tony Bag of Donuts. Welcome to Bad Crypto, Tony. This is apparently the acronym episode, so you can learn your ABCs.
LOL.
ROFL. ROFLMAO. Rufflemao.
Nice. I'll tell you what, folks, this right here is a really, really solid episode. As you mentioned in the teaser of the show,
it's not liquidy like that last show. The last one was more liquid. This one's solid.
No.
Next one's going to be gas. Travis is just going to fart the whole time.
Well, that's episode 399 is what do you expect? So, the World Economic Forum, she leads the Blockchain Council. This is fun. As you mentioned, not only brilliant and bullish on blockchain, but she has an amazing personality. I just love this. I just love Sheila. She's awesome. You guys are going to love that. But before that, we want you to love our sponsors. MobiPay.io. Money's been around for thousands and thousands of years, right? Progressing from those cowrie shells to metals and, plastic credit cards and coins and paper money. And, well, we might be near the end of the paper money cycle with how dirty it is, right? And the transfer of modern money, pretty slow and expensive, especially if you're trying to send it to the other side of the world. But now payments are going mobile, and that's why MobiPay ecosystem is such a great solution. It has 3 core applications that let users spend or send their money worldwide. If you don't have a bank account, they can utilize just their phone number. MobiPay supports cashback programs on purchases with MobiCoin. And they also have a really interesting reward and payment token connecting all fiat and major cryptocurrencies on the global retail marketplace. It's built on the Stellar blockchain, so you know that it's Stellar. And everyone in the Mobi ecosystem is really rocking and rolling with this thing because it really has a lot of great rewards and a really cool loyalty program. Go check it out. It's MobiPay.io. And if you go there right now, you can actually get $10 worth of MBX tokens for nothing, just for signing in, typing it in there. It'll type.
That's quite a deal there, Joey Bag of Donuts, or Tony Bag of Donuts. Joey's your brother.
That's true. You're Joely Bag of Donuts.
Joel likes a bag of donuts.
I have a bag of donuts in my pantry, and I'm very surprised I haven't eaten any of them yet.
I thought you were going to say I have a bag of donuts in my pants.
Of course, we'll not say such things like that. We have a very respectable guest today. I'm trying to keep things above board.
We do have a respectable guest. Why don't we go,
Mr. Gassy Pants guy?
Let's go to the World Economic Forum with Sheila Warren. You've heard us reference the World Economic Forum on the show many times. For those of you that don't know, it's an international organization for public and private cooperation. They engage political, business, cultural, and other leaders of society to help shape global, regional, and industry agendas. And in speaking about the World Economic Forum, they're talking about the future of digital currency, how to govern it. We've referenced the Digital Bill of Rights before on this show, and we're really fortunate to have with us today Ms. Sheila Warren. She is the head of blockchain at the World Economic Forum. And Sheila, we're glad you're here. Welcome to Bad Crypto.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Let me hit your bio up just a little bit here so we can get to the really good questions. You're a recovering attorney And
I am indeed.
you then turned to philanthropy and nonprofit tech. Over a decade ago, you've represented banks, philanthropists, progressive nonprofits, and you were the VP of Strategic Alliances and General Counsel of TechSoup. Oh, that's interesting. Was it chicken noodle or
Tomato
tortilla?
always.
All of that? You went to Harvard too.
I did. I double dipped.
I went to Harvard also.
Did you?
Yeah, I visited and got the T-shirt and
There you
all
were.
that.
You actually spoke it. He actually spoke
Right
at
up the
Harvard.
coop.
I actually did
Really?
speak on the campus, a few years
On
ago.
a mic in the yard or in one of the halls?
One of the halls.
Classroom settings?
No,
Love it.
for real, it was an entrepreneurs convention that was put on by the business school. There's like an ancillary business school, right, for continuing education there,
Yeah.
and it was
Cool.
part of that, and that was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, but for the next month, he was all like, "Yeah, I went to Harvard. Hello, welcome to, my name's Joel Calm." And I was like, "Dude, calm down. You just spoke there once. It was no big deal."
Why did
Oh,
you turn from being a Wall Street attorney? Was it just maddening or what?
I think it's more why I went there in the first place. I mean, it's no secret that you come out of law school and it's not a cheap endeavor to to go get a legal education. I will say I love my time on Wall Street. It was interesting. I worked with super smart people. I learned an awful lot about banking and finance. I did some M&A, structured finance, stuff like that. But then I wanted to go back to stuff that it just kind of captured my soul a bit more. So I came back out west. I'm actually from California originally, so I'm now back out here. Got more into tech and philanthropy and stuff that I found a little bit more in my swim lane.
Very nice. So it's really interesting. So Joel and I, back in 2018, we went to Davos, and that was when that huge snowstorm was there, where it was 6 feet up, like it was literally we were walking through tunnels to try to get around. It was an amazing time because blockchain just had that sort of ICO pop of 2017, and there was a lot of people wanting to chat with us because our show was doing really well there. We had a lot of great conversations, and it was amazing. Really, really fun time. I mean, the roads were ridiculous because here you got all this snow and you got all these crazy luminaries from all over the world coming in and dignitaries and whatnot. That was kind of a cluster, but it was really interesting to me. So tell us maybe a little bit about how did you go down the blockchain rabbit hole? So you went from, doing finance stuff and banking stuff at Wall Street. When did you have that aha moment and you were like, oh yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a funny story because I came into Bitcoin first, but totally as this investment opportunity, that kind of thing. And the story goes, I actually live in the Mission District in San Francisco. And so one day, and my husband had been actually telling me hey, we got to get into Bitcoin, digital gold, da da da.
What year are we talking about here?
Not as early as I wish, but early enough,
Right.
And I was like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Like, what? And all I knew, I kind of had the initial reaction of oh, this is just all, drug dealers and this kind of criminals and what kind of thing. The lawyer brain, kind of came out. But then it's actually kind of my story. What happened was we looked out the window one day and we heard all these helicopters in the Mission, which is not that unusual. It is a Mission. But we're like, what's going on? So we turned to Twitter, as one does, to figure out what's going on in your city. And it turned out that Silk Road 2 was getting busted up 2 blocks from our apartment, 2 blocks away. And my husband turns to me and he's like, Bitcoin just went on sale. And I was like, all right, right? But that's basically but then I kind of ignored it other than that for a while because I just thought of it as alternative money, right? Kind of like currency and the aspects, ironically, I've now come all the way back around years later too. But then when I was at TechSoup, I was focusing on, this is when GDPR was arriving. So I became general counsel there right when people were talking about GDPR and is that going to be a thing? What's it going to look like? What's going to happen? And we had a lot of really sensitive data on nonprofit organizations. So TechSoup is basically a social enterprise that works with nonprofits to help bridge the tech divide, the digital divide, get resources, tech resources, education in the hands of civil society all around the world. And we had a lot of data on organizations that wouldn't want that data, addresses, whatever, leaking out to governments or even to certain kinds of funders, whatever it might be. And so our CTO and I got really concerned about security and breaches and hacks. And I was having dinner with a couple of buddies and they were like, have you thought about putting that all onto a blockchain or on a distributed ledger. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What's a blockchain? So then I made the connection. I read the Satoshi white paper or whatever. And that was kind of my rabbit hole moment. So it actually came about that I got interested in the tech from a data perspective, and then totally distinctly from thinking about it as, alternative or new money. And
the Dread Pirate Roberts was right down the street from you.
That's exactly,
He's like walking his dog right in front of your house. He says, hey, it's Dread Pirate Roberts.
Apparently he was like the nicest guy who like brought chicken soup to like his elderly neighbors, like this old lady. I mean, it's like a super like, neighborly dude, which, I guess isn't done in anyway. So yeah, and then fast forward, however many, like 5-6 years, and now I run blockchain data policy at the World Economic Forum. So
how did that happen? Were you with the World Economic Forum and they didn't have somebody in charge of blockchain and then they decided, or did you like, hey, you guys really need somebody to run it?
I mean, neither and both, basically. So our founder, Klaus Schwab, who is the guy that conceived of Davos, 50 years ago and all that, he decided we needed an outpost in San Francisco. Basically, we needed to focus on new emerging technologies and this concept of the fourth industrial revolution. So this idea that, these new technologies, AI, drones, whatever, we're all going to kind of converge and create this massive new industrial revolution that was going to kind of really change the way that actors in society relate to each other. Similarly to how the steam engine, like that kind of magnitude. And so he opened a center, the forum opened a center out in San Francisco, focusing on a number of these technologies, and they were looking for a head of blockchain. So a couple, again, buddies of mine kind of suggested to me that I look at it, but I actually didn't I thought they wanted a cryptographer, to be honest, right? I thought they were looking for somebody more like a Zabo, somebody like they just kind of be really, immersed in the cryptography side of it, which I was not. But it turns out what they wanted was somebody who knew banking and finance and policy and data and privacy and protection. And, I knew all those things. I'd worked with the State Department, so all these different kinds of things in my background kind of converged, and they recruited me for it. And, here I am. So, yeah.
That's great. And so now the Global Blockchain Council, like how big is that? How many people are involved in that? And I know you guys, and I want to talk a little bit about the Blockchain Bill of Rights, and maybe this is a great time to sort of talk about that. What is the Global Blockchain Council? How does it help how does it help us all in the blockchainy world? And I'm really excited about this Blockchain Bill of Rights thing, because I think it's really cool. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So the council is 25 different people, experts from around the world who focus on blockchain tech in different aspects. So it's, we've got the list too, but it's, everyone from kind of Bitcoin maximalists. We've got people that are kind of skeptics around it. And the goal was really to bring together in kind of an advisory capacity, a multitude of viewpoints on more on the technology than on the use cases or applications, right? To kind of get that perspective going. And like with everything we do at the forum, we're always trying, we're neutral, right? Like we have no skin in the game. If this technology vanished tomorrow, if Bitcoin suddenly evaporated and created a massive, massive crash, the forum is still going to keep on trucking.
No, don't say that.
I'm not capable of conjuring the Beetlejuice, right? That's other people. That's not me.
Conjuring the Beetlejuice.
That's not something I can do. But that's, we're neutral on this, right? Like we were bullish on it. Like I think anyone with kind of, half a brain is, but it's not core to our business model. So we really can serve as this neutral voice. So what the council does is helps us kind of get more facets or nuance out there from people who aren't neutral, who have very strong points of view, like very strong points of view. And they often, there's a lot of arguing, right, that happens sometimes. So we find that valuable. And of course, we have our own network of experts outside of the council, that we're always reaching out to and always like doing our research and our diligence to figure out what exactly is going on.
So tell us a little bit about the Bill of Rights. What's in it and what's the intent?
Yeah, so the Bill of Rights, which we are no longer calling a Bill of Rights, thanks Crypto Twitter for losing your collective mind about the title. But actually, it was fair criticism and feedback, because it's not necessarily so much a Bill of Rights as it is more of a principles document, right? And I do think that the stodginess of that term is actually somewhat appropriate, because what we're looking to do It's actually on GitHub right now, by the way. So anyone can kind of log in and, do a poll and basically
What is it called now?
on it. It's called the Presidio Principles.
The Presidio Principle.
Yeah, because we're located, our office is in the Presidio, and the council's first meeting was in the Presidio where, yeah, so the council...
Blockchain Bill of Rights actually kind of says what it is. Presidio Principles makes you go, what the hell is that?
If you knew the hours of discussion on this topic of the name of this thing, I'm telling you, man, you're killing me. But you can call it whatever you like, my friend. How about that? So the signal we got from the council in our first meeting, which was, I guess last May, almost a year ago, was basically that's kind of what's missing is this multi-stakeholder, from all these different, from civil society and then from the banking sector, from the cybersecurity sector, like of governments, like all these different bodies coming together to say, like, what are some of these core principles we should think about? Now, this is not, I think the important thing to note about this, it is not about protocol. We are not talking, no one is messing with, any of that. We're talking about things that are built on applications built on top of any blockchain protocol, right? So at that level, how do you avoid basically mitigating the entire point of having a blockchain? If you're building, a lot of people are building on a blockchain, right, quote unquote. But then what they're building is so like centralized, it just defeats the entire purpose in many ways. So what we're trying to say is here is kind of an outline or set of principles that if you incorporate them into your design or into your dev cycles, then basically you're going to resist that kind of almost human impulse, right? And you're not going to basically wash away the entire point of building into or on top of the blockchain protocol in the first place. So that is what it is aimed at. And it basically lays out a couple of different, let's call them pillars with some points to consider. And so what we're looking to do right now, we've done a number of rounds of kind of review on this. We've taken it to all over the place. But it currently, in this final round, is up with the open source community, primarily as its audience up on GitHub. And so we're looking for comments there to help us ensure that it's useful and relevant.
So go take a look for the Presidio Principles.
Yep. I mean, we may tag it Blockchain Bill of Rights after this conversation.
Like a hashtag.
Hashtag. Yeah, there you go.
Hashtag PP. No, not that.
No,
that's not that. So at the virtual blockchain week that we had Peter McCormick on, and he talked about Bitcoin all around the world. He's gone to all these different places and has seen firsthand how cryptocurrency is being used all around the world. And it actually changed his perspective. He was thinking that, hey, this really can be helpful to bank the unbanked. And then what he discovered was, well, not everyone has a phone. Not everyone has electricity because of rolling power outages. It's impossible to carry around, 14 million bolivar to go buy a chicken. And so, it's a really interesting challenge. So maybe, what is the Global Blockchain Council? How are they looking at cryptocurrency for maybe the unbanked and some of the maybe less fortunate countries in the world that are led by leaders that, and the economy's going crazy, and we're kind of seeing this all over the world now with the economy going crazy, but specifically that the poorest people are going to have the biggest challenge, and they need this the most. Like, people are getting paid $100 in crypto or Bitcoin for their week, and then maybe crypto goes up or crypto goes down, and now they've lost money or gained money, and it's just crazy. And maybe they don't have a phone to even charge to get. So how is the organization looking at maybe helping some of those areas, or is that even part of the initiatives?
Big time. Yeah. So actually in Davos this year, on the last day at Davos, we announced the creation of something we're calling the Digital Currency Governance Consortium. And that's a group of 150 different entities. And again, true to form, it's got, civil society, it's got governments, it's got companies, it's got startups, it's got, academics, all kinds of different thinkers and experts. And what we're doing there is we're looking to establish through a lot of rigor and research, kind of what should be a governance framework that could guide the issuance of a stable coin. So not so much crypto, but really stable coin, right? So something that's backed by an extrinsic asset or fiat even. And I'm also on the board, the advisory board of the Digital Dollar Foundation, Chris thing. And so I think there's, we're seeing with this pandemic, this stimulus package, right? So you all saw it, in that legislation, there was that mention, then got yanked about, what if we actually had a US dollar coin or something of that kind? And look, there's no question that could actually have made the receipt of stimulus money, faster, more efficient, cheaper, in many parts of society. And a couple more things. I think there's, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think there's this perception, which I find, frankly, pretty offensive, that financial inclusion applies only in like the developing world, But I'll tell you, I live in San Francisco, right? I look out I'm not walking down the street much these days, but, in prior times, we have a huge problem with that in the United States of America. It's a huge issue. And the issues are somewhat different than they are in the developing world. And so to talk about financial inclusion with one brush, as if this is kind of a monolithic problem, is it's not only colonialist in the sort of development economics context, and I'm a development economist by undergrad training, but it's just totally misguided. So part of what we're doing with this consortium is really pushing on and kind of trying to call out some of the nonsense around that notion that this is a core use case that can be solved through the issuance of digital currency. Because there's just a lot wrong with that assumption.
So what are some of the proposals? I'm curious, what are the solutions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the reality is that for there to be a supranational coin, something that's going to truly be global in nature, or even kind of operate in a regional level, it's a really hard question. So we rolled out this in Davos also, a policymakers toolkit for central bank digital currencies for CBDCs, right? And our general finding was like, look, in most countries, for most economies, it doesn't actually make a ton of sense unless it's an additional offering that is supporting your traditional fiat, right? But most places aren't fully ready to go totally paperless. And when you do that, you're going to leave, or coinless, you're going to leave behind swaths of the economy that aren't ready for that transition. There has to be a lot of policy that accompanies that kind of rollout, or you're going to have a lot of problems. And I think we've seen this in places that have kind of tried to do it. And so the use cases that we've seen that have been successful are like some of the tax collection, right? Like Bermuda collecting some of the taxes and, using digital currency or some digital payment stuff that we're seeing, right? But we're not as far along as we like to say in this space, as we like to kind of, insinuate that we are to people outside the space, right? And we all know it. We're sitting in a space, we know the reality. It's not that we're not going to get there, but unless we have a policy framework that acknowledges what it really means, what it looks like to be truly poor in this world, and understands what, like ethnographic studies, right? For example, to kind of really, really focus on what that looks like and what's going to help solve those problems, a simple rollout of a currency or shift in the mode of currency is not going to cut it.
Is that part of your task to, determine what that is, or are you more, once they, this other group in the consortium figures out, it's your job to execute?
Yeah, well, I'm basically overseeing the consortium, right? So, that's within my domain here, and the forum has launched that initiative. And I take that very seriously as a personal responsibility. I'd say even more than a professional responsibility. I think that there aren't a lot of people in this space that have a big platform that are thinking about things in this way. Really, and that's not to kind of pat myself on the back. It's just to say, the forum has an opportunity, I think, to bring a lot of attention to some of these realities that they're not getting surfaced. So to the extent that we can provide this additional framework for thinking of digital currencies, I think that's going to help make the case more robust. I think it's going to make the case for financial inclusion more real and more sticky, which in my mind benefits not just society, but it benefits the entire crypto space.
No, I love that. You are at such an interesting, pivotal point. Like, you are helping lead, the discussions around potentially us moving to a paperless monetary society, which now here we are with the coronavirus. And I went to the grocery store, I had some cash, and then they gave me my change back. And I was like,
yep.
I don't Get the change.
Exactly.
I don't know if I really want this paper. What am I going to do with this? This is gross. And so it's really interesting. So you have such an important role, and I think it's so I think we're so privileged to be able to chat with you, because you're helping create policies and helping influence the influencers around the space. My question is this: So Joel and I we've done almost 500 episodes of Bad Crypto, right? When we've done all of our regular episodes and the extra ones and everything, we're coming up on about 500. Now our official
We mostly like each other.
It's true most of the time. Well, we have our official 400th episode coming up here with John McAfee, but we've done all these extra like crypto ICO spotlights and different things that we had done in the heyday. So we've done about 500, and we've seen a lot of different projects that are doing stuff. And I think the one that resonates the most when it comes to potential Main Street adoption seems to be crypto.com. Have you had a chance to play around with that at all, in the app and the card and the touchless pay and the different wallets that are in there? Like, it seems to me something like that could be used around the world, because if they don't have a phone, well, they could have a card that they could get topped up with their crypto, that they could go use a phone and switch it over, or go to ATM or switch it over. Like, what are your thoughts around that? Because it seems to me that we're getting really close to potentially being able to help everyone without needing a phone with that touchless card they have.
Yeah, I will say, without commenting on any specific, initiative, I do think that the move away from anchoring on mobile devices is an important one. I think that, again, there's this kind of perception, and let's call it like ironic, like mainstream crypto, right? That like, well, everyone has a phone, so what's the problem? You can get a wallet. What's the deal? This kind of thing.
Right.
And it again, I mean, it maybe, I'm not alone in this. I know that we need to be really thinking about everybody, like everybody, not just like, kind of everybody, right? And if we're not thinking about everybody, then I mean, like, what's the point, right? On some level, like those are the problems we really want to solve, and particularly in light of what we're seeing and the inequalities that this pandemic is exposing yet again in a new way, right? We're going to enter a period where economic recovery is really key. And like you say, I mean, one of the first interviews I gave on this, they were like, oh, digital currency, is that going to die? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
right.
No one's taking paper money, right? Like, are you kidding? We don't even, at that time, it was a month ago, we didn't even know if it was transmitted through that stuff. I'm like, if I handed you a bunch of quarters right now, are you going to be like, yeah, man, thanks. You're going to be like, what are you doing right now? You know what I'm saying? So I was like, come on, so I think that this pandemic is going to be an accelerant, not only for what it exposes, cracks in the healthcare system, cracks in ability to pay, cracks in how much fees, particularly when money is moving across multiple borders, are from bank to bank to bank, how much that's costing people who are, in the lower income brackets of our society, or in the no income brackets in our society. I think we're seeing renewed interest in UBI concept, which is kind of what a stimulus package kind of is, right? I mean, the stimulus payments are somewhat analogous to UBI concept. So some of these things that seem super radical or really out there are starting to be considered more closely. And among those things is the idea that a device isn't necessarily your wallet equivalent. And I mean that kind of like literally and figuratively, right? Like your digital wallet is kind of on your phone, but also like it's not where you're holding all your there's other ways of kind of securing that information that might A, be more secure, and B, might be more accessible.
I find it interesting that, whether you don't want to take any positions. I mean, you guys are located in Switzerland. It makes complete sense to me.
On brand.
By the way, I would totally take change if it was when they still made it with silver, right? If the quarters and dimes were the old, because that's, precious metals have really demonstrated that they are a excellent store of value.
Resilient, right? They're resilient.
Well, as we talk about getting away from fiat currency and moving to something digital, there is a topic that makes technologists nerd out, and it makes individuals freak out. And that is the notion of having a chip that is embedded, under your skin, that truly leads us to a cashless society where you are personally identified by this chip. And I mean, it brings into mind all types of biblical end times, verses. And so I'm curious, where's the WEF on that?
Yeah. Well, I think, let's put that in immediate context, right? Because I mean, look at what we're seeing around the world as a response to this pandemic. You're seeing some countries, like some Eastern European countries, that are basically suspending the legislature and giving like supreme power, to the executive branch to kind of make decisions about everything from shutting down banks or allocation of resources. You've got states competing in the United States for ventilators and, healthcare equipment, right? Like on an open market or even on a black market. I mean, let's be real. It's probably happening on the black market too, right? So I think these are the kind of like dystopian worldview that kind of a Black Mirror type of thing is kind of slowly coming, and there's a willingness to suspend a lot of what we consider rights oriented practices when you're dealing with an emergency situation. So, look, we're still a far away from kind of like literally having a chip underneath us. But the fact that facial recognition is kind of blowing up all over the world, right? That there are fewer and fewer limits in some countries on, I think there was something I saw that said, you'll have to check this if it's true, but there's something I saw that said that in the city of London, there's literally like 4 inches in London that are not under surveillance by some form of recording device, right? Like whether it's actually recording or whether it's like a live viewing.
I almost feel like there's a camera on me now.
I know exactly, right? Okay. It's everywhere.
Right.
And so, as we enter that reality, do we really know what's happening with a lot of that data? I mean, we don't really know. So one of the things that, this is a digression, so if you want to cut it later, but I'll just tell you about it because I think you guys will find it really cool. So one thing I also run here at the forum is our data policy team. And we're launching a new initiative we're calling the Data for Common Purpose Initiative. And the idea here is we tend to be very protective of data when we consider a source of the data. So we're like, oh, it's my healthcare data about my blood type or whatever, or my status on whatever diseases or whatever, right? My genetics. That's so personal and private to me.
Oh yeah, it freaks me out. I don't want anybody to have my DNA.
Right? Yeah. So, or like GDPR has this notion of personally identifiable information, PII, right? And they kind of define categories of that: your name, your address, your whatnot, right? But you may not care in certain contexts about that at all. And what we've seen with this pandemic is that an awful lot of people are more than willing to provide their pretty sensitive personal, health or whatever information, location information, if it's in service of like getting this pandemic to flatten or end it, right?
They can't imagine it being used against them.
Correct.
If you told them, oh, by the way,
downstream effect.
Here's the trade-off, this could be used one day by a totalitarian government to pinpoint where you are, and if you don't, right?
Yep. Or even something more less, horrifying than that, but more like even social ranking, right? Credit scores being based on where you visited on your locations, right? Which are things that are super conceivable, right? And actually are kind of happening now in many ways, right?
It is in China. That's like an interesting thing. Like you get such a low score, you can no longer ride an airplane. Although none of us can really ride airplanes right now. So
dude, there are like mortgages. There are mortgages being denied in the United States based on people's Facebook profiles and pictures they put up about what they're doing. And there are health insurance being denied for people because their behavior is right. Right. So this stuff it's real. And so you give more access to that. However, what we're saying is it's not so much about the origin or source of the data. It's about what it's actually being used for and by whom. So when you kind of think about it, like you reframe the narrative around data in that way, you can see how a blockchain could actually help with the tracking function, right? The sort of like transaction moment could really help kind of evaluate, okay, who is accessing it and for what purpose.
Well, like through like maybe opt in on the blockchain or something, like, hey, I allow these people to have this.
That's the thing.
Nobody else. And I want it anonymous. I don't want you to know it's me, but you can have,
Exactly. And then you could also imagine, right, a monetization stream. So you could actually create royalty payments on your data if you're willing to share it for whatever. And so in my mind, especially as we enter this period of like intense job loss and transformation, that's, it's accelerating a lot of kind of the automation. Things like that are just going to kind of be accelerated as a result of this pandemic. As it becomes less, is it safe to go back to work or not? I don't know. If I were a company and I was like 80% of the way to kind of automating something, this might be a time for me to think about going all the way because it may not be safe for me to actually have my workforce back, right? So there's things like this that we're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. But you can imagine the need for new economic models that could provide streams of income to people. And data could potentially be one of those things. If someone's making a ton of money off your data, maybe, there's a way to ensure that you get a piece of that and it's done fairly. So these are the kinds of things we're exploring on the data policy side of the house that link directly into the work I've been doing with the blockchain team for the past 3 years here.
Very cool. Yeah. So it is really interesting now because we're in such a crazy time in the world, right? And so there's so much uncertainty, and it's like I was sort of thinking like, maybe by 2030 we might be paperless, and we might, it's like, and then that's what I was thinking, like even at the beginning of the year. So every 10 years, I'll write myself a letter 10 years into the future. And this year, I wrote a letter to myself, and I was talking about, I remember how I wrote about, because I was familiar with it. I'd been paying attention. I had seen the blips of the coronavirus, and I've been paying attention to things, and I saw they had the big pandemic exercise, the Agenda 201 thing in October, and so I was like, wow, the world could really change in these next 10 years, maybe not even in a good way. Like these pandemics being talked about a lot by these really influential people. I would assume a pandemic could be coming really shortly, and crazy things could be happening. So maybe, now that we know we're in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, and the 17 million jobs have been lost in America alone, and all this stuff is happening, like, where do you visualize, how are we going to come out of this, and how is the World Economic Forum going to help the world economic disaster that we're getting ready to go into? Because I feel like we've just seen the atomic plume going up, and we're just waiting on the shockwave right now, because when you tap on and then slam on, the global economy breaks. Like this is unprecedented. So maybe kind of, help us see, and maybe calm us a little bit potentially about how is this going to be better? How are we going to ease out of this thing and find the new normal?
Yeah. So, the good news is that we're not flying totally blind here. There's with the virus, we're flying pretty blind, right? This is a brand new thing that there's a lot of very, very smart people are focusing on finding a cure and all that kind of thing. But in terms of kind of a disaster cycle, there's a lot of literature and process and all kinds of studying that's gone around disasters. And normally disasters are natural disasters. If you have a big hurricane that comes through, there's this period, it's kind of known, where you're in crisis response and you get a certain kind of funding and a certain kind of intervention, right? And then you enter this recovery period, right?
It's kind of those are normally though in one area. Like
correct.
This is
global. It's global.
Yeah.
It's everybody, right? It's everybody. And again, it's inequitable. It's not hitting everybody in the same way. But we can leverage a lot of the learning that's been done over the past, hundreds of years, frankly. But even in the more recent years, last decade, I would say, we've seen an acceleration in some of these gigantic displacement events, So we do have a sense of kind of what the pattern of a crisis response into recovery looks like. And so part of what the forum is doing is we launched, the World Health Organization asked us to sponsor something called the COVID-19 Action Platform. That's very immediate in focus. So it's like, how do we, support shifts in supply chain logistics to get, manufacturing to kind of transition into things that are needed in the immediate short term for healthcare purposes and get those things where they need to be. But there's a ton of activity we're doing for when we do enter that recovery period. Now, when is that going to be? I certainly am not the expert that can tell you that. I'm only hopeful there's someone out there who has a better sense than I do, right? But at some point, we're going to enter a recovery period. What we're trying to do, especially from the technology practices that we have at the forum, including the ones that I lead, is get us ready for that. Like kind of say, right, like let's not just blindly roll out some technology like is often done, kind of, and hope that it kind of lands. Let's make sure that we're actually reimagining some of what hasn't worked in society. And we're really thinking about what is going to be a way that we can make engagement more robust and basically more productive, like for everybody. So in line with that, the forum has this whole initiative we've been talking about for the last decade on stakeholder capitalism. And we spent a lot of time in Davos this year, a lot of programming on this topic. And what that is saying, look, a lot of companies operate in this extractive model. It's shareholder model. You're kind of trying to always pull the value out, pull the value up, right? What if we actually completely transition that model and said the most viable, because we're seeing this to some extent. You don't get consumer backlash if you have a stakeholder model, right? Where you're actually compensating people at every kind of across the spectrum in some fashion, or if you're actually including them in some fashion, right? Those are just more robust businesses that aren't constantly having to accede to consumer demands or strikes or whatever it might be. So this is an opportunity for us in economic recovery to think about those models, to think about how do we build resilient systems? How do we build more resilient cities? There's a lot of technology that can help us make our cities like smart, not just smarter, but actually resilient and ready for these kinds of crises in ways that many of them have not been. And that rebuilding and recovery process, I personally feel very optimistic about, because I think we're going to land up as horrible as, I mean, I don't want to downplay the horror of the situation we're living in, but I do think that what's going to emerge from this is going to be, honestly, a better society in many ways, a society that's better for more people. At least that's my hope.
That's great. There's a lot of learnings. I mean, from a lot of these countries, like maybe even Taiwan and South Korea, how they didn't have to shut down, but they were prepared because they'd seen SARS before and they'd seen some of these other ones. And so they have these sensors and these different checkpoints and different things. And it's like, I know that it's interesting. And I know Joel and I have had a lot of conversations. We're both, key opinion leaders for Huawei, and we have been for years, and the whole 5G thing. But what's interesting is that, China has a 500-year plan. Yeah. Like most societies, that's like, to me, I'm just like, China's going to win. Well, China's going to win. They have a 500-year plan. Huawei has a 25-year plan and another 25-year plan after that. And what's interesting is in America and in the Western society, we have a quarterly plan. And in America, we have a 4-year plan, and everybody on the other side always wants to oust the other one that's in there. And it's always like, so we don't have a plan. Western civilization does not have a plan for the future, whereas some of these older civilizations do. And so to me, that just seems like we have to learn and adapt and utilize some of that. We got to have some more long-term vision and eliminate a lot of this short-term thinking, because it's really getting us in trouble.
Dude, I don't even know what I'm going to have for dinner. I mean, that's how short my planning is.
I know.
I'm thinking, what am I going to have tonight? I don't know.
I think I'm having whatever's left over from my last grocery, which is quite a long time ago. So whatever I can scrape together, right?
I'm having an egg.
These days. Yeah, exactly right. An egg and some cereal. Exactly right.
Go in the fridge, smell it.
Different kinds of pasta.
Okay, I'm good.
Exactly. But I do think, to your point, Travis, I do think that some of these fractures have been coming for a while, right? And we've seen them. And this is, like I said, this is really shining a light on what isn't working. And it's proving that, some of the systems that we've been relying on and we've been kind of trying to, scotch taped, I wouldn't say duct tape, like scotch tape together, are kind of in need of reevaluation, So, and again, I mean, I think that there is a way that technology can support that reimagining, right? And not it's not the solution to it, but there's a way that it can support some of that sort of structurally, which I think is important.
Honestly, part of, what's broken with society is it's human beings, right? And it's relational. And as we are put in a position where we have to stay home and have conversations with family, it gets us back to some of the basics of what's really important. And it's not technology. Technology's amoral. It's just a tool. How we use it is to, going to determine whether it's used for good or for evil.
Yep. I think that's right. I mean, I think that we don't pay enough attention to human behavior and psychology in the tech world, right? Specifically, but I also think even in finance. I remember when I first started talking about, crypto and everything else, and people were like, oh, nobody would ever use crypto. They'd never this and that. And I'm like, do you think about the average person paying for something? They take, you think they're thinking about what's behind? They're just like, I want to get out of here. I don't want to be in this gas station for more than 5
magnetic.
Who cares?
Or what the little chip does, stick it in and boop.
Don't care.
They said that back with the shells too. Oh, we're never going to stop using shells for this moneta is the bomb. Right. What do you mean? Why would we need something more than cowrie shells? I got a pack full.
Anytime there's that new technology. They said that about the automobile. What's wrong with horses? And self-checkout, people aren't going to want to do that. We're used to, checking, going through the line and having them go boop, boop, boop. Turns out we're qualified to do that.
It's the psychological lift, right? Like, what's the psychological lift? So when I said to people, if you actually swiped your credit card or whatever, and rather than that, or if I actually Venmoed or Square Cash or whatever something, and rather than that connecting to my bank and your bank and some intermediary, it basically was just done in crypto. Would you care? Would you know the difference? Like if you were at a certain level of sophistication, you would, because I think to the earlier point, one of you made, around oh my God, all of a sudden, it's going up and down and it's worth less and more. Yes, on some level, you're gonna care about that. But if there's something that's a digital currency that's that's pretty stable in terms of what it's backed by, I don't think you care. I just don't think you really care.
I think the majority of people, Travis, I don't know if you could do this, but could you tell me the difference between what's happening with the magnetic stripe on a credit card and the chip, other than it's supposed to be more secure?
Well, I would, no, but I would tell you this too, is like, that most money is just digits on a screen anyways. What is it, like only what is it, the number?
Yep.
2% of money is actually printed out. The rest of it's just digits on a screen. So it's already digital assets. It's just in a different form. And so as the form becomes more familiar, then people will adopt it over time. And I really want to commend you for leading the World Economic Forum and the Blockchain Council in helping people become more aware of this and doing what you do. So thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you guys. This is really fun.
Absolutely. You guys can go to weforum.org to see what they're all about on the site. Is there any other locations you'd like people to check out what you all are up to?
Yeah, well, we certainly welcome comments on the GitHub that we mentioned before for the Presidio Principles or Blockchain Bill of Rights. And other than that, you can hit me up on Twitter. My DMs are open, and I love to hear feedback on what we're up to.
That's great. We'll get a link to that GitHub, put that in the show notes. Once again, Sheila, thanks so much. It's been enlightening.
Thanks, you guys. Have a good one. Stay safe.
While Travis continues to eat that bag of donuts out of his pants.
Wow.
Good interview with Ms. Warren. I would welcome her back anytime. She's got some great info and seems just really super hip on adopting blockchain technology for world economies.
Absolutely. And if there's anything that we can do, as we mentioned to her, to help them out and to help spread the gospel of crypto goodness, we'd love to, to offer our services to help out with that. It's just so weird. We've not traveled anywhere in a month and a half, almost 2 months now. I think it has been 2 months. It's so weird to just be stuck in my house.
The last conference I went to was Social Media Marketing World in San Diego. And that week was when other conferences were closing and shutting down. They got theirs in right under the wire. And so people are still posting pictures from that conference. Remember when we were all together? Oh, yeah, I do remember. It wasn't that long ago, but
remember when the world was normal?
But we're bringing everybody together, gang. Virtual Blockchain Week is drawing closer and closer. It begins April 26th, goes through May 2nd. You should go register for Virtual Blockchain Week at virtualblockchainweek.com.
Yeah, you can definitely go ahead and do that. I want to actually flip the switch here as we get ready to wrap up this particular episode. One thing is interesting though is a lot of people are stuck in their heads right now. I mean, not only do we have a virus that's impacting our bodies, but a lot of the virus is the mind virus and the fear and the hysteria that everyone has. And
everybody doesn't have it though. That's everybody is not fearful and hysterical.
Some people are. Some people are. A lot of people. I mean, if you pay attention to the media, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of that sort of craziness coming at you. But I want to actually throw something at you here that's interesting. So they've recently done some studies on the brains and thought. And there's this thing called the magnetoencephalography, which is easy for you to say.
Say that 10 times fast.
Magnetoencephalogram is what they're called. And what it does is it actually, whenever you're thinking, you can actually detect those thoughts outside of your head with this sort of thing. And so there's an article on MIT about this. But so if we all actually were to sit down and to meditate at a certain time every day, and Dr. Bruce Lipton, who is a really great guy in the whole spiritual world, he says that if we all were to at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. just meditate for 10, 15 minutes, send out love and gratitude and joy and help and healing for the world, because the world is led by there's some creepy people at the top of the food chain, and we want to disarm them for the most part. We want to make this world a better place. So just sort of meditate at 11 o'clock in the morning or at nighttime, whenever you remember to do it, and just send out good vibes, because those good vibes collectively, if so many people were actually sending out good vibes, the world could change in a really positive way. So I'm a big fan of meditation. I've been doing it for a long time, and I do think that if you collectively meditate, that could be even better, make the world a little better place. And it's proven by science.
Well, kind of.
So you can actually detect thoughts, and you can detect the electric waves around your body.
What am I thinking right now?
Nothing. Probably sandwich.
sandwich. A hamwich. I'm hungry. A little thought bubble came up there. Little ham sandwich came in there. Some French fries with a little ketchup. Nothing wrong with putting good out there, folks. And I'm with Travis for that. But I want to, if I was going to have a superhero name, you just came up with it. I want to be Magnetoencephalogram. Was that what it was? Encephalogram?
Yeah.
That's I am Magnetoencephalogram. I kind of feel like a transformer.
Okay.
Joel by day, Magnetoencephalogram by
I thought
night.
you said, dude, you just discovered my superpower. I am Hamich.
The power to make and eat ham sandwiches. And I do. I make a killer sandwich because, look, here's the deal. You don't just take your bread, right? And don't go with that plain old white bread stuff, right? I like to get like a nice loaf, potato bread or maybe some challah bread because Jewish. And it's so tasty. And you toast it a little bit, right? I was doing toasty before Quiznos. You toast that bread a little bit. And then you put the ham on it, you put the cheese on it, put it back in the oven and get it all nice and melty. Throw some of your, what are your veggies of choice? I like some lettuce on there, a little salt, pepper, oregano, a little spicy Dijon mustard. Take it out, cut it in two, put some chips on the plate, and boom, hamwich meal.
Hamwich. I love that. What I've actually been doing is making a lot of egg sandwiches. I like fried eggs. I remember having them when I was a kid, and I just have never made them as an adult. But then you fry up a couple. Take your pan, put some. I just take the stick of butter and rub it on the pan, and then boom, pop an egg down, fry that on both sides. Then get another one, fry it on both sides, and then put it between some Velveeta cheese on some toasted bread with some mayo. Oh my gosh, it's so delicious, and the sandwich is like 80 cents.
That sounds good. The videos you see on Facebook of people showing new ways to cook old stuff. Like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Saw a video recently where they put the eggs in the pan and the eggs just start cooking. You take two pieces of bread and dip them into the egg and then turn them over the other way with them facing each other. You wait for the eggs to solidify, flip the whole thing over, take the eggs that are flopping over the side, throw them all on the bread, put it together. Egg sandwich made in the pan. Oh my gosh. Mind blown.
Must be a big pan.
Yeah. So you use like a 12-inch pan to do it.
Nice.
But yeah. So that's how I make my egg sandwiches now. You could do that with your egg sandwiches too.
I love it.
This is the Bad Cooking Show. The Bad Cooking Podcast.
Well, this is more now with more banter at the end of the show. So we get to the good stuff and then we leave the bad stuff near the end because it helps everyone.
Yeah, we like to get you to the content from our accomplished luminaries before you get to hear us banter. But we're done bantering. Go listen to every episode we've ever made. Go register for virtualblockchainweek.com. We'll talk to you guys soon. Please stay bad.
Who's bad?
The Bad Crypto Podcast is a production of Bad Crypto LLC. The content of the show, the videos, and the website is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice of any kind. You shouldn't make any decisions as to finances, investing, trading, or anything else based on this information without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional financial advisor. Please understand that the trading of Bitcoins and alternative cryptocurrencies have potential risks involved. Anyone wishing to invest in any of the currencies or tokens mentioned on this podcast should first seek their own independent professional financial advisor.